Good afternoon and welcome back to Football League World TV. Coming up within the next half an hour, we have a show, as you can see, dedicated to Luton Town, who are quietly going about their business in the Championship and rising up through the table under Nathan Jones, just like we saw last season. I'm your host, Alfie Burns, and I'm delighted to be joined by our resident Luton Town fan, Billy Mulley. Billy, how are you getting on?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. Work is very good when you get to talk about the team you love when they're doing quite well. So yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing your thoughts over the course of the next half an hour. Billy, any other Luton fans joining us this afternoon want to get their thoughts in the comments, please do. Any of the topics that we're discussing or anything that you just want to throw out there to Billy, get them in the comments and we'll look to get them up on the show. As always, we're streaming across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, so any likes, shares and subscribes are greatly appreciated. Let's get straight into it then. Billy, Luton currently sitting 7th in the table, heading into this midweek round of fixtures that kick off tonight. Actually, what are your thoughts on the season so far? Are performances and results living up to expectations pre-season?
Yeah, I think the majority of Luton fans would have hoped to have improved on last season's 6th place finish. I think the majority of them would also be careful of what they wish for, given the fact that finishing 6th was a massive achievement last year. And, you know, to facilitate the amount of changes that we made and, you know, the number of people coming in, the significant changes meant that, you know, like an 8th place, 9th place finish was also a decent enough finish coming into this campaign. But I think ultimately sitting 7th at the moment in such a competitive division, only 4 points off the top, but, you know, only a handful of points away from the relegation scrap, it's been really hard to assess where we currently are. You know, the fact that there's so many games that we've played already that, you know, it could quite easily have swung our way, could quite easily have swung the other way. Yeah, it's hard to make anything decisive out of what we've seen so far. But I think the key takeaway is that it's a machine that is improving at the moment. We've got the likes of Morris and Adebayo looking really strong next to each other now. It wasn't the case at the start of the season. Midfield three also looking very, very strong. And it just seems like everything's coming together. But yeah, as I'm sure we'll go on, there's some very, very tough tests coming up in the next week or so.
It felt a little bit at the start of the season like there might be a slight playoff hangover. There was only 2 points picked up from the opening 4 games of the season, but since then there's only been 1 defeat. If anything, Billy, what's Nathan Jones changed?
I think he's had to. I think ultimately during the summer he needed a bigger squad. I think it was quite evident that going to Huddersfield that we didn't have the strength in depth to be able to compete over the course of the 2 legs, and with key personnel injured, it was a big point that we needed to go and recruit. And I think he's managed to integrate some really good players into the squad. The bench now is at an exciting level. You sort of see the 7 names of the players on the bench and you think, you know, these could get into a lot of Championship clubs. It's exciting to see. But I think what's changed is it's probably the forward line in terms of, you know, Luton is still playing quite direct, but we're quite productive around it. The way that Morris holds the ball up, the way he combines with whoever it is, Cornick, Jerome, Adebayo, just the players that we've got in attack at the moment and sort of complemented by, you know, the likes of Freeman and Clark just behind them that feeding them with opportunities. It's really refreshing to see. And whilst Adebayo performed really, really well last year, it seems in an attacking sense, Luton have upped it a gear. And quite surprisingly, defensively, we've been hit with a few injuries. Reece Burke never seems to be fully fit, which is a real shame because he is a real top-class defender at this level. Gabe Osho as well, suffering with a few injuries, but we've managed to be quite resilient at the back. Tom Lockyer's come in and looked really, really assured. Dan Potts, so I've spoken about a few times now, has really, really surprised me with the performances he's put in. But it just seems like a club going in the right direction once again. And given, you know, Nathan Jones has managed to advance Luton up the Football League pyramid, every season he's been Luton manager. It gives you that sort of hope that, last season's sixth place finish wasn't a fluke and is actually something we can build upon.
We're discussing whether Luton can get into the top two. We've had a comment from Mella, a Watford fan. Keep Luton Town away from the top two. Of course, a little bit of early needle there ahead of the weekend's fixture between the pair. You've touched on a few individuals in the first part of the show there, Billy, but one man I want to highlight is Carlton Morris, of course, signed in the summer. He has 6 goals in 14 appearances in the Championship so far this season. Have you been surprised by his impact?
Yeah, I've been surprised. Obviously, he came with a lot of expectation. The fact we broke our transfer record signing him, but I didn't expect him to have as an immediate impact as he's had. I know he hasn't scored in the last 4 games, but the performances he's putting in, week out, he's a real monster up top. And the way he holds the ball up, the way he combines with his other forwards, reads the game very, very well. Of course, got pace to go in behind, but also intelligence to come in and link the play. He's building those relationships as well. He's building those relationships with the wing backs. He's building relationships with Adebayo or Cornick or whoever's partnered next to him. And I think that's been key. I think he's integrated well into the squad. A player that really fits the Luton way. Of course, Luton are a more direct team than most in this division, and I think that really suits him. But ultimately, he can get the ball on the ground and he can take his man on. He can, as I said, link the play very well, one-touch football. He just ticks a lot of boxes for what you want in a decent Championship forward. And the fact that he's still 26, it gives you excitement that he can continue progressing at this rate he's currently progressing at.
I guess from an outsider looking in, when Morris signed, I wasn't 100% sure that he was going to be, an automatic pick in the starting 11. For example, where do you think he ranks in Nathan Jones's sort of pecking order when it comes to who's playing up front?
Yeah, that's a very, very difficult question. But I think I'd have to go. He's probably the first name on the entire team sheet for me. There's some controversy, well, not controversy, but there's some questions around whether he should be included at Norwich tonight, given that he's on 4 yellow cards and could therefore miss the Watford clash. So that's a different question in itself. But I think given the fact that he's already established these really positive connections with Adebayo, with Cornick, with Cauley Woodrow, of course, when Woodrow's been fit, I think that makes him sort of the ultimate strike partner at the moment. And as I said before, Adebayo might be scoring the goals at the moment, but Morris's all-round play just makes him undroppable. And he's the kind of player that you look at, and if Luton were to succeed and go to a higher level, he's the kind of player that could make the step up. I think he surprised me with how quick he's adapted to things, and there was a lot of excitement when he did arrive, but ultimately I don't think anybody anticipated it would go as smoothly as it has done. Let's
talk about Adebayo then. A fairly slow start to the season, given how important he was last season for the Hatters, but it's 3 goals in 3 games, which is supplemented by the brace that he got against Huddersfield Town not too long ago. In terms of his goals and his form, how important is he to retaining Luton's positive start to the season?
Yeah, he's massive. What we say about Adebayo, he scored 16 goals in 40 games last year, and that was his first full season in the Championship, and there was this expectation, like there was the expectation within Luton fans about the club itself would continue progressing. But Adebayo had a few struggles at the start of the campaign. He wasn't able to hold the ball up like he could do. Anticipation levels weren't quite where he left off the 21-22 season. But yeah, I think the Huddersfield game really got to see, to be fair, even before that, probably the whole game, we got to see what Adebayo was all about again. Holding players off, linking up with Morris, goals, assists as well. He's, when you combine Adebayo with Morris at the moment, a lot of people thought that maybe they're too similar in profile in terms of the hold-up strikers, but they really complement each other, work really well. And yeah, Adebayo, real menace in the air. And I think we've seen that in recent weeks. it's quite exciting knowing that you've got Morris and Adebayo as your starting two at the moment. And as we saw against QPR, you can bring Harry Cornick on and Cameron Jerome and still have those same levels of threat going forward. It's been, very exciting to see. And Nathan Jones's mission of bolstering his front line at the start of the season has paid off.
Bit of an off-the-cuff question. Do you think that there's enough firepower there to compete for the top two then?
Yeah, I honestly do. I've got a bit of a reputation of being quite a pessimistic Luton fan over the years, which, I'm sure that could be backed up with previous things that I've said. But talking specifically about firepower, talking within the options that we've got 5 very, very good strikers at championship level. Woodrow out at the moment, but I honestly think with those 5 strikers, goals should continue to fall, and then especially with the creativity within the team as well, it does seem a forward line that is within the top sort of 2-3 teams in the division.
I'm sure there's other players that are impressing you at the moment in a Luton shirt, but just going the other way, is there anybody that you feel's had a bit of a lacklustre start to the season that Jones is going to need a little bit more from moving forwards?
It's difficult because the ones that perhaps not impressing are not really getting enough game time. Not somebody that's been underwhelming me, but I would have thought that Alfie Burns would have seen a few more minutes by now. He's been on the bench, and of course at the start of the season he had an injury that halted his progress, and you have to be careful with a player like Alfie Burns given his injury record. But I think most Luton fans would have expected him to have started a few more games by now. Seen real brief glimpses of him in pre-season, and he had a really positive impact in those games. So I think Luton fans are excited to see what he can do, but ultimately slightly disappointing that he hasn't got the sort of the game time we would have wanted. I think Cauley Woodrow, mentioned him there. He had a really, really good game against Blackburn, and sort of before he got injured, he sort of raised expectation levels because it was a really strong performance. But before then, he did have difficulties playing in that sort of number 10 role. But apart from that, there hasn't really been a weak link in the side. You look at the 18-man squad, and it's very, very competitive. And when it comes to team selection at the moment for Jones, it's going to be a right nightmare for him.
We're only 14 games into the season. Luton's record reads 5 wins, 6 draws and 3 defeats, leaving them on 21 points in 7th. Interestingly, after 14 games of last season, they were also on 21 points with a +5 goal difference, which is exactly the same as this year, albeit they were sitting 5th in the table, a couple of places higher than they are at the moment. But looking at that record and what unfolded last season with Luton finishing in the playoffs, Billy, there's got to be sort of a heightened belief that last season's achievements weren't a one-off and that they can be achieved again this year.
100%, yeah. It does certainly read very well at the moment, the fact that we're averaging a healthy amount of points per game. We're just outside the playoff positions, and last year that was a points tally and a goal difference that had us in the playoffs. But you look at the division now compared to last year. It's a lot more congested at the moment than what we've seen in previous years. At this moment in time, you don't really see a clear winner. You see that teams will continue to beat other teams, and bar maybe Burnley at the moment. But yeah, I think in terms of where Luton are at the moment, I think this is the kind of position Jones would have been hoping and sort of expecting for to be just outside that playoff chasing pack, being, again, despite coming in the playoffs last year, there's still this underdog tag. When you look at Luton's finances, you look at the club and where they've been in recent years, there's still this underdog label that I'm not sure they want to really shake off, because I think it benefits Luton the way they play and the way they go about their business as well. So in that respect, I think that they'll be happy where they are. They're happy not playing catch up, but trying to capitalize on mistakes and dodgy form that's coming from teams just above them. But as you say, it's been 5 wins, 6 draws, 3 losses. The 3 losses have come against teams in the bottom half of the division. that's something that's completely different to this time last year. We struggled against the teams at the top of the division, but in games against the top 8 so far, Luton have won 3, drawn 2, and haven't lost any yet. So it brings that kind of different mindset into the games that Luton have got coming up. We mentioned there, got Norwich, who may have entered a little bit of dodgy form, but they're still a very, very good side at this level. And then the Watford game, which I was speaking to you off air, I'm nervous for that already, and we haven't even got past the next fixture. So yeah, it's going to be quite telling. I think these next 2 games, I think that's when we can start drawing links, and not conclusions, but drawing sort of trends about how this season has really started.
Yeah, I mean, this time last year, it was quite apparent that, well, for me anyway, that Fulham and Bournemouth were going to be the 2 sides that would finish in the top 2. I know Nottingham Forest ran them quite close in the end, but they were the 2 standout sides. And it's not like that this year, as you've mentioned, Billy, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's a ridiculously low number of points between Burnley at the top and somebody like Wigan, who I think are sitting lower mid-table at the moment. Do you think that that's a good thing for Luton, or a bad thing? You know, maybe just with in mind getting that initial aim of the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it can be a good thing. We're seeing Luton at the moment. They're on a 6-game unbeaten run. I think if the division I don't think it'll stay as competitive as it is, but if it stays, a similar level of competitiveness throughout, then I think that will bolster any kind of team that are, sniffing in and around the playoffs, because they'll know all it needs is a run at the end of the season. That can take you from, mid-table to competing for a playoff spot. So I think ultimately it's about just continuing runs like Luton on at the moment, 6 games unbeaten. That is, it's quite rare in this division, given that everyone is beating everybody. But yeah, I think that's the secret to it. Just trying to benefit when you are on these kind of runs, trying to get the results and continue momentum. As we say, these 2 big games coming up, Luton have put themselves in an excellent position. As I said before, picking up 12 points from 6 games going into 2 of the biggest games they'll have to play all season. And, after this Watford game, Luton have played some very, very tough teams. They've gone away to Burnley. They've hosted Sheffield United. Obviously, the 2 games coming up, hosted QPR, went away to Swansea. So they look forward to an easier run. There's no real easy run in the Championship, but they'll be looking at these fixtures and thinking, 3 points are very attainable in sort of games to come.
Let's look ahead to what's to come for Luton then. We've sort of brushed over it already, but 3 of the next 4 fixtures are against Norwich, Watford and Reading, which is quite a challenge in itself. There's 3 other fixtures, I think, before the World Cup as well, but those 3 fixtures, Norwich, Watford and Reading, they're going to be quite the test for Luton, aren't they, Billy?
Yeah, massive games. Away to Norwich, you don't really care how bad. Well, not that it hasn't been awful, Norwich recently, but form hasn't been particularly good. But you're still in for a very, very tough evening against the Norwich side. They displayed that against Watford. I know Watford were very good against them, but Norwich just displayed how quickly they can make teams pay in this division. Of course, players like Josh Sargent, who's joint top goal scorer in the league. They've got threats coming through the middle as well. It's a team full of talent. Max Aarons as well, of course, came through the Luton Academy, somebody that's an attacking threat and very, very resilient defensively speaking. A couple of injuries for Norwich that may mean they reshuffle the pack a little bit, but ultimately they're still going to be a very, very strong side and a team that will fully impose themselves on Luton. Watford, what can I say about this fixture? It's going to be a big one. The teams haven't played each other with fans in the stadium in a while, in about 16 years, I think it is. So that's obviously going to be a very, very tasty fixture. And, with derbies, you don't really know how they're going to pan out. Will form play its part in determining the kind of game it will be, or will form go completely out the window? And then Reading as well, still hard to really assess where they are at a football club. Obviously, a very, very good start to the season. Completely dominated against West Brom, though, at the weekend. I don't know if their bright start to the season may have dimmed slightly. It'll be interesting to see where they are at ahead of that fixture, and I think it's Sunderland as well, sandwiching that fixture and in those sort of run of form. And yeah, as we know with Sunderland, they recruited really well. Obviously, a very, very strong team already from winning promotion from League One. Tony Mowbray, I'm a big fan of. So yeah, 4 very, very difficult fixtures coming, and I think if Luton come away with them still on this unbeaten run, then I'm going to be one happy Luton fan.
Let's just talk about tonight a little bit more. It's Norwich, of course, and probably one of the standout games in the Championship. What are your thoughts going into that? It's a massive game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge game. Again, it's a massive test of where Luton are in sort of recent Championship history. Luton haven't performed very well, haven't got the kind of results against teams thriving at the top end of the Championship, and that seems to be something that they've addressed. Picking up 11 points against the teams in the top 8 in 5 games so far. It's going to be very, very. I've mentioned there that the kind of players that Norwich have, they're a side as well that typically are very dominant at home. As we say, there seems to be a little bit of dodgy form creeping in sort of recent weeks. It's going to be a very difficult one, especially when you factor in team selection, which is going to be very, very confusing given the amount of pressure on this Watford game and the amount of eyes that will be on this Watford game. Mentioned before, Carlton Morris on 4 yellow cards, whether he'll be risked from the very start. I think that's a debate within the Luton fan base at the moment that no one really has a particularly strong answer for. But yeah, there's different selection dilemmas all around the pitch. You've got Henry Lansbury, who's been playing in the holding role recently. Whether he may be rested because he needs resting every now and then to allow Luke Freeman to play number 10 role and then push Alan Campbell and Jordan Clark back. There's a lot of things for Jones to think about ahead of this game, but ultimately it should be a very, very good clash between 2 very good teams in the Championship.
Are we going to get your prediction then, Billy?
Yeah, I said before I'm a pessimistic Luton fan, but I've been given a bit of optimism recently by these performances and results. So I'm going to go 1-0. I think 1-0 would represent a very good result at Carrow Road, and not too many teams come away from Carrow Road with any points. So yeah, I think 1-0, another point, extend that unbeaten run into Watford would be brilliant for the Hatters.
That concludes our look at Luton Town and their automatic promotion ambitions this season. Thanks to Billy for joining me and offering his thoughts, and thanks to any Luton fans that have joined us across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. Coming up on the channel later on this afternoon at 4 p.m, we have the AFL Tuesday night score predictions show with Sam Rock and Ben Wignall. So make sure you tune in for that. Big EFL fixtures coming up tonight and tomorrow. So please do tune in, deliver your predictions on there and see what the lads have to say. Between now and then, take care and we'll see you again soon.